started using a Juul 3 years ago when I turned 18. Before this, I did not use any nicotine of any kind whatsoever. Since then, the longest I've gone was the 2 weeks I went abroad with my family. After I saw how many young people were getting sick from the COVID-19 virus, I decided this was the perfect opportunity to quit vaping for good. The coronavirus is a respiratory virus, which we all know doesn't just only affect the older generation. Vaping and addiction has drastic effects on people physically and mentally, which is a very good reason to quit. Since I've stopped vaping for 4 weeks now, I've realized that quitting nicotine is not impossible. The hardest times are in the morning in the first 2 weeks. I was a pot a day type of guy, and I noticed that how this quarantine situation was perfect for kicking this addiction. The main things I want to cover in this speech are the harms of addiction, the harms of vaping, and the harms of vaping during this coronavirus. A nicotine addiction is just like any other addiction, and no matter how small, it can be very harmful. Merriam-Webster defines addiction as the compulsive, chronic, physiological, or psychological need for habit-forming substance, behavior, or activities having harmful physical, psychological, or social effects, typically causing well-defined symptoms such as anxiety, irritability, or nausea. Upon withdrawal or absence, the state of being addicted. Harms of addiction. My first point may be from personal experience, but I know others that feel the way I have. And the worst part of the addiction I am now realizing was that I was never at 100% without nicotine. I was always a top priority to have enough pods when I left and to have a charged battery. It's awful that depending on whether or not I had enough nicotine or I had a full charged battery would determine how my day went. Effects of addiction. Addiction affects your brain function as well. According to Gateway Foundation online article called Effects of Drug Abuse and Addiction, they said all drugs, nicotine, cocaine, marijuana, and others affect the brain's reward circuit, which is part of the limbic system. This area of the brain affects instinct and mood. Drugs target this system, which causes a large amount of dopamine, a chemical in the brain that helps regulate emotions and feelings of pleasure, to flood the brain. This flood of dopamine is what causes a high, and this high is what causes drug addiction. Especially at our age, with our brains not fully developed, this is very serious and can have long-lasting effects. While we're young, we should not need an external device to get through our day and determine how our day goes. After quitting, I noticed that finally be able to know what it was like to not need to worry about having enough pods or battery. I can't stress enough how good it feels to not need to rely on something like nicotine. It very well might be true that the harms of vaping. It very well might be true that vaping is healthier than smoking cigarettes. That is no way means it is not harmful. In fact, nicotine vapor can have more formaldehyde than even cigarettes. According to David Railton from Medical News Today on May 25th, 2018, he says, the original 2015 study that investigated formaldehyde in e-cigarettes, it identified new forms of e-cigarette vapor of formaldehyde in e-cigarette vapor that were at levels 5 to 15 times greater than that of cigarettes. Formaldehyde is commonly used as a disinfectant, and trust me, you do not want to be inhaling deeply a disinfectant, especially at the temperatures vaping occurs at. On top of this, the United States has confirmed vaping-related illnesses. According to Maggie O'Neill in an article for health.com on October 17, 2019, she writes, currently 26 deaths as a result of vaping-related illnesses across the United States in 21 different states, and 1,299 cases of severe lung damage associated with e-cigarettes have been reported across the United States. These numbers are serious because of how popular and widespread vaping is in our youth culture today. Unlike cigarettes, we do not know the long-term effects of nicotine. I know that all these quitting vape commercials are cringy and odd, but they are true. We do not know the long-term effects of vaping, and they are right in saying that we're basically being used as test rats. On top of that, they are also right that formaldehyde is consumed when one is vaping, and formaldehyde is known to be a type of carcinogen. Harms of vaping during this coronavirus situation. We all know by now that the coronavirus is a respiratory illness, meaning it affects the lungs. We also know that this virus affects some people more than it affects others. According to an article for Healthline.com on April 7th, 2020, Crystal Rapol tells us that new coronavirus responsible for the current pandemic causes mild symptoms for many, but those who are with underlying health concerns, including respiratory problems related with vaping or smoking, may be at a higher risk for severe symptoms. Those with a history of long-term vape use fall under this category. I know that for many, they don't believe that this virus can seriously affect them and that it only affects the old. But that is not true. Everyone can get sick. This is a very dangerous disease. Just because the death rate is lower for youth, that doesn't mean it's going to be a walk in the park. This is wishful thinking for many people. WebMD reports that a review of more than 4,000 U.S. patients who were diagnosed with the novel coronavirus infection shows that an unexpected 20% of deaths occurred among adults ages 20 to 64. And 20% of those hospitalized were 20 to 40 years old. So even though you're young and healthy, it doesn't mean you can't end up in a hospital due to this coronavirus. Although these numbers are still low, they are proof that even the young and healthy need to be doing everything they can to protect themselves. This is the reason why I decided to use this time to quit vaping. The scary fact is you do not know how this virus might affect you. It is very possible that all you'll feel is drowsiness and maybe lightheadedness for a few days. It's also possible that it can make you very sick and have you end up in a hospital on a respirator. I'm doing whatever I can in the case that I contract the virus to set my body up so that it can properly defend if it needs to. To finish this off, during depressing times like this, we need to make sure to use the time to best we can. I saw that this was a perfect time to quit vaping. With the threat of the coronavirus, limited access to vaping goods, and the removal of socializing. These were some of the reasons why I chose to quit. But if you're anything like me and have known that you've needed to quit for years, these reasons may help you get over the hump that you need to finally kick this addiction. Everyone needs to quit sucking down on formaldehyde and take their personal health serious. Keep in mind that personal health does not only involve the body, but also physical health. And I do not believe it's possible to be mentally healthy under the foot of addiction. I'm happy to have quit vaping, but I wish I had never started.